As a young citizen of India, armed with technology, knowledge, and love for my nation, with a vision of transforming India into a developed nation, I'm joining Shobhit University. What about you?
Very good morning to all the participants from India and abroad. Shobhit Institute of Engineering and Technology, Meerut, deemed to be university, and its centers of excellence, Center for Informatics Development Solutions and Applications, and Center for Industry 4.0 Technology Studies and Applications, in association with African Asian Rural Development Organization, ARDO, New Delhi, organized this weekly international webinar series on open source digital technologies towards self-reliant India, Atmanirbhar Bharat. Today is 12th June 2021. On behalf of the Honorable Chancellor, Honorable Vice Chancellor, and His Excellency, the Secretary General, ARDO, the faculty members of the university, and on my behalf, and as Professor Emeritus and Chairman of the Centers of Excellence, Center for Agricultural Informatics and E-Governance Research Studies, Center for Agribusiness and Disaster Management Studies, Center for Informatics Development Solutions and Applications, and Center for Industry 4.0 Technology Studies and Applications. Welcome our guest speaker of today's webinar, Mr. Prakash Ramaswamy. He is a strategic advisor, Autometry Technologies, a GovTech startup, Chennai. Today's topic is open source GovTech, empowering growth with automation. Under this international webinar series, these two centers of excellence, namely Center for Informatics Development Solutions and Applications, which promotes informatics and e-governance through standards, and Center for Industry 4.0 Technology Studies and Applications, have organized 31 webinars during this COVID-19 pandemic period. Namely, open technologies to provision simple and economical IT infrastructure, a roadmap for students using free and open source software, open source software and industrial IoT for SMEs, free and open source software adoption and business models, open data platform for smart digital government, technology imperatives, make in India for self-reliance, edge artificial intelligence, data governance for self-reliant India, digital India transforming governance and society, India's email service, citizen@indiamail.com in 22 constitutionally recognized languages, ecosystem architecture for digital transformation, education system cyber critical infrastructure, seizing opportunities in open innovation and value creation network in the digital world for self-reliant economy, ensuring food safety and compliance through technology, digital India, urgent need for semiconductor manufacturing in India, technology investment in agriculture value chain, role of foreign direct investments, entrepreneurship and skill development, artificial intelligence design pathways, the rise of platform economy, revisiting value chain governance, the era of automation, industrial robotics, and Industry 4.0, Indo-German perspective of technology transfer, skill gap analysis and opportunities, role of artificial intelligence in healthcare, current developments in diagnosis and vaccine research, digital agri-tech and agri-startup perspective, health informatics network value chain e-health system and beyond, leveraging emerging technologies for ensuring transparent and traceable agri and food supply chains. Unleash the power of citizen development for enterprise software development, e-governance models towards sustained quality services to citizens, backed up by technology. Indian MSMEs to adopt Industry 4.0 technology capabilities, urgent need for mentorship and accelerator program, building public digital platform using microservices and APIs, health informatics network value chain, early childhood development and learning, health informatics network value chain, clinical artificial intelligence, interface between machine learning and health informatics, health informatics network value chain, importance of social medicine and community health in the times of health emergency. Gravity filter, G filter, a simple low-cost solution to the drinking water treatment in rural India. Today is the 32nd edition of this very important webinar series. We will have the talk by our guest speaker, Mr. Prakash Ramaswamy, Strategic Advisor, Autometry Technology, Chennai, on the topic Open Source GovTech Startups Empowering Growth with Automation. The keywords are, please note down, the keywords are open source. GovTech means government technology, GovTech startups, empowering growth with automation. To recall, on 17th October 2020, a talk on technology imperatives make in India for self-reliance by Dr. K.K. Bajaj, Founder Director CERTIN, MCI, Ministry of Communications Information Technology, and Founder CEO, Data Security Council of India, and former Deputy Director General NIC. On 7th November 2020, a talk on Digital India, Transforming Governance and Society by Dr. Y.K. Sharma, former Director General, National Informatics Center, Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, Government of India. On 21st November 2020, a talk on ecosystem architecture for digital transformation by Sri J. Satyanarayana, IAS retired, former Secretary to Government of India. And on 5th December 2020, a talk by Seizing Opportunities in Open Innovation and Value Creation Network in Digital World for Self-Reliant Economy by Dr. Jebabale Vinanchi Arachi, former Principal Advisor to the Director General, UNIDO, Vienna. We have Atmanirbhar Bharat, the road ahead in India. It is a vision of our Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, for making India self-reliant economy. And this vision is rested on 5 I's: inclusion, investment, infrastructure, and innovation. And based on 5 pillars: economy, quantum jump, not incremental; infrastructure, one that represents modern India; systems, 21st century technology driven; vibrant demography, and a demand whereby the strength of our demand and supply chains should be utilized to full capacity. This was announced on 15th May 2020 by the central government. And our Honorable Prime Minister also has given a clarion call, vocal for local, to make it global, in order to strengthen Make in India, Make for India, and Make for Global. The reforms announced have been systematic, planned, integrated, interconnected, and futuristic for creating strong enterprises, generating employment, and robust supply chain. We have the Digital India program announced in 2014, when the Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, took over as the Prime Minister of India. This is a power to empower. And this program is centered on 3 key areas: digital infrastructure as a utility to every citizen, governance and services on demand, and digital empowerment of citizens. As of 31st December 2018, India had the population of about 1.3 billion, 123 crores Aadhaar digital biometric identity cards, 121 crores mobile phone, 44.6 crores smartphones, 56 crores internet users. The platform economy is emerging, which is economic and social activity facilitated by digital platforms, digital ecosystems that will shape economies in the future. Digital ecosystem management, a new discipline for the platform economy. Open source, an extremely important aspect of Digital India. In 2015, the Department of Electronics and Information Technology of Ministry of Communications and Information Technology released three major policies related to open source: policy on adoption of open source software and policy on collaborative applications development by opening the source code of government applications, which intends to increase the pace of e-governance applications development and rapid rollout implementation by adopting an open source development model based on the current worldwide practices like GitHub and SourceForge. Policy on open application programming interface, open APIs for Government of India, for promoting open standards for software interoperability across various government departments and agencies. The Government of India has already notified the policy on open standards for e-governance, technical standards for interoperability framework for e-governance. Worldwide initiatives on open government also focus on open APIs to easily access the information collected by government organizations. India is well positioned to become a vibrant hub for free and open source software innovations. Due to a large-scale 4G data subscribers in India, 96% of whom access digital world via open source-based mobile operating systems, primarily Android. Some of India's largest government projects, including Aadhaar and many technology startups, have been built using free and open source software. Acknowledging the huge potential of Foss, the Government of India has issued the policy on adoption of open source software in 2015. MeitY, the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, has also announced on 22nd April 2021 free and open source for government innovation challenge to harness the innovation potential of the Foss community and startups to solve for critical issues in GovTech. Foss that's a free and open source software is seen as a key component of GovTech 3.0, which is about building secure and inclusive open digital ecosystem ODEs that harness the potential of social innovators to help solve India's toughest problems. Emerging technology startups, HR startups, HR tech, edutech, regulatory tech, fintech, artificial intelligence tech, medical tech, and so on, so on. Now, GovTech, that is a technology in governance, is the youngest one. RegTech, that is a regulatory tech startups, helps create a world where it is easier for business to comply, unlocking both opportunity and business value without compromising consumer protection. And that makes a better world and for everyone. Regulatory tech, RegTech, promises to disrupt the regulatory landscape by providing technologically advanced solutions to the ever-increasing demands of compliance within the financial industry. It is the portmanteau for regulatory technology in the startup universe as hundreds of tech ventures compete online to help banks comply with the regulations for transactions monitoring, fraud, and risk management, identity management, among the other things. This is called no-code tech, regulatory tech startups. Another tech which is emerging is civic tech. During the COVID-19 pandemic period, the challenges are complex, ranging from lack of adequate financial support to opaqueness of government processes and data. Further, the use of artificial intelligence and machine learning to simplify and automate regulatory compliances and make the platform cost effective for financial institutions. I would like to quote, there is a mission in the state of Columbia in the US. The mission is that we need to invest in startups that modernizes the operations of government in the state of California, United States of America. It is a mission statement. And they also have set up a GovTech funds, govtechfund.com. The mission statements are, we harness the power of transformers, technology, and capital to modernize the operations of government so we can repair the society's connective tissues. Transformer means who? What do you mean by transformer? People is where we start. We are honored to partner with the true transformers that are passionate about modernizing the operations of government. I would like to quote Prime Minister of India. He said it on 18th January 2021 while addressing the Param, the Startup India International Summit. He said it, in order to provide initial capital for startups, the nation is launching 1,000 crore Startup India seed fund. This will help in setting up new startups and promote their growth. The pandemic situation has accelerated digitalization in the public sector too. While technology won't fix complex public policy issues, an important dialogue is opening up between startups and the government. There are 11 startups entered the Unicorn Club in 2020 itself in India. India is the world's third largest startup ecosystem. There are over 41,000 startups in the country, according to PTI news release. Governments have also had to respond to new demand for the innovative services. Public servants have had to shift to remote work by default. This we have seen during COVID situation. Doctor surgeries have turned to telemedicine. Digital supply chain management have become a basic public necessity. The skilling the startup ecosystem, Mr. Priyadarshi ecosystem. It is an article written by Priyadarshi Nanupani, founder and CEO of CSM Technology. He says that there is a Startup India scheme to empower startup ventures and boost entrepreneurship. By 2025, India is slated to have 1 lakh startups that will employ 3.25 million plus people, produce over 100 unicorns, and scaling a combined market value in excess of $500 billion US dollar. There is a lot by way of Indian government's commitment to fast track knowledge economy and revenue up the startup engine. GovTech 3.0 or NODE, National Open Digital Ecosystems, is defined as open and secure delivery platforms anchored by transparent governance mechanism, which enable a technology collaboration among citizens, businesses, and governments to transform societal outcomes. The country has already witnessed GovTech 1.0. That was an era of computerization of manual process, GovTech 2.0 was about building systems which are digitized end-to-end process, and GovTech 3.0 is focused on open digital ecosystems. We have seen unified payment interface is an path-breaking ODE. Diksha, National Digital Infrastructure for Teachers, National Urban Innovation Stack, and ODA for Agriculture is also being designed. But the challenges are to be, the following challenges are to be addressed: privacy issues, federal issues. This may increase inequalities and also security issues. UPI, Unified Payment Interface, have given birth to a vibrant community of both public and private sectors in financial services, such as mobile wallet payment services providers who are building solutions in m-commerce, bill payment, and peer-to-peer real-time payment. The enablers of the digital ecosystems are, according to UN report, application programming interface, communities of participation, continuous support, spearhead product or services, revenue model, governance model, and use of the framework. Digital world, it is the rise of platform economy. Industry 4.0 is today, Industry 5.0 is tomorrow. But this Industry 4.0, there's the fourth industrial revolution, is the ongoing automation of traditional manufacturing and industrial practices. It is the key technologies of Industry 4.0 are A, B, C, D, E. A means artificial intelligence, analytics, operation research. B means blockchain. C means cloud, IoT, 5G communications. D means big data, and E is ecosystems. And digital transformation now takes place by building public digital platform using microservices and open APIs. Services can be implemented using different programming languages, databases, hardware, software environment, depending upon what fits the best. From a strategic perspective, microservices architecture essentially follows the Unix philosophy of do one thing and do it well. Data underpins 6 P's of digital services: personalized data, paperless data, presence-less data, proactive data, perspective data, and pervasive data. With this background, let me turn to the address by Mr. Prakash Ramaswamy on the topic, Open Source GovTech Startup, Empowering Growth with Automation. This topic will motivate and galvanize the participants watching our telecast through facebook.com, Sobit University India, or youtube.com, Sobit University in, for motivating them to establish GovTech Startup to harness the power of transformers, technology, and capital to modernize the operations of government so we can repair society's connective tissues. This will lead to Empower India. Let me introduce our guest speaker to the participants of this webinar. Mr. Manish. Profile of Mr. Prakash Ramaswamy is a strategic advisor, Autometry Technologies, a GovTech startup, Chennai, and a director of project delivery, MST Solutions, Tiruchirappalli, Nadu. Mr. Prakash Ramaswamy has extensive experience in product and program management, consulting, customer relation management, and competitive research and analysis in the IT industry. Mr. Prakash Ramaswamy has a proven track record of leading and executing all phases of diverse technology and business transformation engagements successfully with multiple customers worldwide. He has a keen technical and business acumen to communicate and deliver effectively with the client executives and other key organizational stakeholders with a strong domain background in the areas of life sciences, financial, and IT infrastructure services. Mr. Prakash Ramaswamy has prior experience with the startups in India with respect to building customer relationship as well as product management. Currently, he is active in a strategic advisory role for a Chennai-based startup, Autometry Technologies, who are into the development of an automated building plan approval systems product. We welcome Mr. Prakash Ramaswamy to the International Webinar Services Series and Open Source Digital Technologies for Self-Reliant India, Atmanirbhar Bharat, on the topic Open Source GovTech Startups Empowering Growth with Automation. Thank you, and over to Mr. Prakash Ramaswamy for his address.
Thank you, Professor Moni, for a very good introduction about me, and I'm really honored to be part of this webinar series that you have been doing, the last few months, and it's a privilege for me to be part of this, and this gives me an opportunity to talk about my experience around the startups that I've been, part of in the Indian ecosystem, and also, it gives me a great, opportunity to discuss more about the open source software itself, the kind of the important role which is being played by the open source software, right, in the startup ecosystem in India right now. India currently being, number 3 in the world in terms of the number of startups which has been coming up, right, across the world, and where Foss is, playing a very significant role in terms of the adoption by the different startup companies, and it's definitely creating a lot of opportunities for the entrepreneurs across India, where we are playing a major role actually in bringing up this ecosystem. And so that's a brief introduction, I think, about what I've been doing earlier. And today, as part of this webinar, I'm going to talk about the free and open source software itself, right? Like how it evolved over a period, more from a global perspective and also from an Indian standpoint, right? Where we exactly stand, and what are the kind of challenges that we have been internally having, in terms of adoption. I think from an adoption standpoint, we have been significantly doing well over the last few years, but from a contribution standpoint, we are still struggling. We are not actually, really contributing per se for the open source community. When you look at, like some of the countries like US or Europe, right? So we are going to talk about that, and I'm going to, briefly explain about the entire ecosystem of the open source. Who are the key stakeholders? I'll briefly touch upon that. And then one of the key stakeholder as part of this ecosystem is the government, right? Whether be it as a government of India or you take any government organizations. So they're going to play a key role as part of the ecosystem. So I'm going to, go a little deeper into that, how India actually, from a government perspective, from an open source standpoint, we have evolved actually over a period in the last 10, 15 years. And what really we have been doing in the last few years, and how much government of India has contributed from an open source adoption standpoint. I will talk about that, and the kind of challenges and the recommendations that we can actually see, how to overcome these kind of challenges that the country or the ecosystem is facing right now. And then we will also talk about the roadmap, like what we can actually look at, right? If we had to improve upon the ecosystem within India, what are the things that we need to look at? That is something that we can actually look at. I'm going to talk about that. And so this is going to be a brief summary about the discussion that I'm going to touch upon today. And also what I'll do is at the end of the presentation, I will actually make my conclusion remarks on the ecosystem itself, the challenges and the kind of adoption that we need to make or the adjustments that we need to make. And also I'll draw upon some of the examples from my previous experience and my current experience, where I've been part of a few startups, right? What are the things that we have done in terms of product management or product development per se? And I will also talk about Autometry technologies, where currently I am a strategic advisor. We are actually working on a very interesting product from a government tech perspective, which basically is going to influence the e-governance platform of government of India in terms of reducing the footfall in the the government offices. So I'm going to talk specifically about a product that this company is developing, which is revolving around the building plan approval system. So basically, it will touch upon the workflow around the e-governance aspects of the product, as well as how we are actually interfacing with the actual building plan approval algorithms. So that is something that I'll talk about, so that you'll be able to relate to what specifically this company is doing from a startup perspective, and what are the open source framework which we would be able to readily adopt today if we had to actually develop a product, right? Or a very similar product which I'm going to talk about. So this is in nutshell about the presentation which I'm going to share today. And at the end of the session, I will have the closing remarks from Professor Moni, and then we can actually open it up for any question and answers if anybody has online. I will try to answer some of those questions. So this is going to be the structure of the presentation today. Let me share my presentation here. Okay. Is the presentation visible for the audience?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Okay, I think Professor Moni talked about this topic where we are going to discuss about open source, and I again wanted to thank Professor Moni for giving me an opportunity as part of the international webinar series on open source digital technologies. Okay, so what is open source software? So generally, people call it either as OSS or it's called it as Foss, right? It's pretty much commonly known as free and open source software. What exactly it is, right? Because there are a lot of misconceptions about the open source software itself, because of the lack of understanding of what exactly it is, right? Because the moment you talk about free, people generally relate to a product when it is offered free. They think that it is like a substandard product when they compare with a commercially available software, or anything that is commercially available, right? So that is a major misconception which is happening across the board, across the industry, in every department. There is a challenge to remove this misconception. Okay, so what exactly is free and open source software? Free is, it does not denote that the software or the product that you're offering is free. It's basically conveying that you have the freedom to use the product or service which is being offered, and it is not free of charge. That is the underlying meaning of the whole, terminology. Because, this is completely misunderstood across the industry, which I just wanted to actually emphasize here. So free is nothing but freedom to use the product which is being offered as part of the open source software. What we really do here is, you actually, take up that particular product or a service, and you are basically have the freedom to actually make or adopt to the, make any changes to the software which is available. Like, for example, let's take the, the scenario in India, right? India is a very diverse country where, you have a lot of challenges in terms of, the multiple languages spoken across the country, and the kind of different dialects that we have, because officially we have about 22 languages, right? So if we have to do an adoption, a digital adoption across the country, it's going to be a very big challenge. This is a very, very mounting challenge for, India as a country to adopt a specific product. Like, for example, let's take a software, right? Like Microsoft Word or, a Microsoft Windows. If you have to launch this product in US, it's going to be pretty straightforward, because, you're not going to have the variation in the product per se across the country, where you'll be able to launch on the 50 plus states across the United States, right? Without making any changes to the underlying product. But imagine launching the same Windows, application, or any, a closed source product which is coming from outside. If it's going to be launched in India, it's going to be a big challenge, because there are a lot of, people across the country where, we're not familiar with English, right? Obviously, then it's a roadblock for them to actually use the software. And obviously, you're putting a hurdle there. And typically, the adoption rate is going to go down, drastically down, right? So this is one of the biggest challenge. India being a very diverse country, it's going to be a big problem for us to actually do that. So imagine you have an operating system like Linux or something which is freely available, right? What you can do here, you will be able to actually take up that product, and then you will be able to freely make adoption, or you have the freedom to actually make changes to that product and then launch it for your country, right? In India, if you wanted to make changes, if you want to launch this specifically to a particular region where they are speaking a specific language, you will be able to actually make changes to this, and then you can launch a specific version only for that particular region. Okay, so this is the freedom that I'm talking about. So it is not that you'll be able to use it freely, but the kind of freedom or the adoption flexibility that you have, right, to which you'll be able to build upon on the available software, which is part of this ecosystem. And then coming to this open source, right? Obviously, again, people have a problem relating to an open source, right? Obviously, there is kind of a mental block amongst the people, right? Like the moment you say open source, they think that there could be a lot of challenges with the security. Would the security be compromised because I'm trying to use open source? And they always think inferior about the product. This is something that I mentioned earlier also. The moment you talk about Foss, right? Some kind of an inferior perception which has already set in people's mind. This is something that we need to actually, this perception has to be removed. This is all mythical, that has to be removed from the people's mindset. I'm not saying that people are still not adopting, but the rate of adoption, it's still not as expected as we have to see in India, right? So open source is something not we don't have to worry about the product being inferior or the service being inferior. You can actually compare that with any commercially available software, or you can even actually rate some of them which are much more superior than a commercially available software. Okay, so what really is open source, right? So the availability of source code for the community, for the end user, for any adopter to modify and redistribute. That's what really open source means. So let's take the same example, right? We talked about an operating system, or we wanted to launch a multilingual product or a service for the Indian market. What do you typically do? You take up the base product, which is available in open source, and then as a community user, right? Because you're adopting to the base version available. And then what you do is you adopt to the Indian market, right? Like, for example, if you want to launch this product to, with 10 different languages, if you want to make it really multilingual, you can basically take that base product, make the adoption, make the necessary changes, modify that, and you'll be able to redistribute this product, right? Where you have made these incremental changes in terms of the multilingual support. So this is what basically open source means. So free and open source, let's not think that it's something inferior than a commercially available product or a service. Obviously, it is always on par with what is available commercially, and there are a lot of products which are currently in the market which are much more superior and which we typically adopt in day-to-day use. Okay, how many of you use the products or services which are shown here, right, in the screen? We know Google has got a fantastic search service, and Uber offers a taxi service, and you watch movies in Netflix, and Amazon has got a lot of different services which they offer. And there are so many other social media products, right? Like, for example, Facebook. You have Twitter, where you actually be very busy, do interaction in the social media. And there are other manufacturing and automobile manufacturers who are all using open source, which we do not know. It's not very visible, but if you look at it from an open source perspective, all these products or companies, right, they all use open source in one way or other. And they also they adopt, they consume, as well as they also contribute back to the open source. That's the greatest thing of all these different companies. Like, for example, Google, they have actually made a lot of contributions to the open source community. Like, they're making significant contributions today in terms of the natural language processing. They have some fantastic translation services which they provide, which they also have offered back to the open source community, where you will be able to adopt the software which is being offered by Google, right? And that's one example. And even Facebook and Netflix, they've all contributed to the open source community. So if you look at it, right, typically every day, every hour, open source is being consumed by us in one way or other, right? One form or other, whether be it in your car or in your phone, in your some of your home appliances, or the kids electronic games which you often try to see, right? So it has become kind of ubiquitous today. That's what I would say. Typically, you don't realize, but open source has become a part of our everyday life. So I'm just going to walk you through, the Foss timeline, how actually it evolved over a period. First, let me talk about the global scenario, and then slowly I will come to the Foss, how it expanded in India. So I will talk more about that actually. So if you look at this timeline, sometime in 1997, that's when the birth of open source happened actually, right, in US. It's not that 97 is the time when it happened, but a lot of things which started happening even like 10-15 years back, right, where there were a lot of activities which are happening in MIT lab, in Stanford labs, and in Berkeley, and even with the start of the computing era, right? A lot of things were happening where they were trying to actually set up the internet and they were trying to do a lot of different activities, with which we started formally calling as open source in 1997. Okay, and slowly, once the open source slowly started falling in place, like that's when they started realizing the power of actually sharing information across in the community, right? Like for example, earlier it all used to be like closed doors where the software or were typically proprietary, right? They were like a closely guarded secret, and it was held proprietary, and people are actually holding on to the kind of products or the kind of invention that they were making, right? They were keeping it as a top secret. But slowly what was happening was people were trying to figure out the kind of challenges that it was throwing up. Like for example, obviously adoption may not that easily happen, right? Because it is being held by a single person or a group of people, and it is like a top-down approach, and they actually have to make a decision, and if they decide to make an adoption, or if they have to make any changes to their software, that's when the evolution can happen in those products, right? In the commercially available closed guarded products. But the community outside, right, they were seeing this as a challenge because the user adoption was not happening that fast. So that's when they realized, they started forming small groups and then trying to figure out how, working as a community or working as a group collaboratively, how actually they can make improve upon a product. Because the moment you involve multiple brains, obviously, you are actually getting into a lot of different ideas which you will be able to adopt. Whereas the biggest disadvantage of having a product within a closed group or a company, right, it is pretty much restricted to the kind of the brain talent that you have within that company, because beyond that the adoption may not happen that fast. But imagine the same thing within a community, right, where you'll be able to frequently meet together, brainstorm, and then talk about the product, discuss about the pros and cons, advantages and disadvantages of an existing product, where you'll be able to proactively come up with a wonderful product which can actually overcome the current problems, right, or the current hurdles. So that's how as more and more, when people started actually discussing about all these different things, right, they started realizing, understanding the potential of working in a closed group, including people from different walks of life, having them contribute to the development of a product. They realize very great potential. That's how slowly things started evolving, and then the open source initiative got set up sometime the end of 1999 2000 period. And during this period, actually, even the Linux Foundation was set up. Obviously, during this time, you all know that Windows was completely dominating the industry, right? The software industry, where pretty much almost about 90% of the desktops or the from an operating system standpoint, they were actually completely dominating the entire market. And that's when the closed community like Linux Foundation realized that they typically realized the kind of challenges that they were facing in terms of the product which is available currently, like namely the Microsoft Windows. That's how the Linux Foundation started up, and then they actually put together it started with an alternative for Microsoft Windows. They came up with the Linux OS, and and then Linus Torvalds, as you all know, who is the biggest contributor in the Linux Foundation, he started working on something called Git sometime in the middle of 2000. So this is again bringing up the entire development ecosystem, right, into a common community where people can actually come together, collaborate in a common platform, share their code. Like, for example, if you have to develop, the Linux platform, right? Obviously, they did not have a platform like Git earlier when they started the foundation. So they were actually doing it in bits and pieces, right? Like, for example, if there were like 100 contributors, right? And the contributors were actually working individually, and they had a nightmare in actually coordinating everybody's work together, right? All their contribution have at some point have to be integrated. That was becoming a nightmare. That's when Linus Torvalds thought about this brilliant idea of bringing the entire development community, the development ecosystem together into a common platform where they can all come into the same framework of the system. They can actually log in to a particular place where they will have a common platform where they'll be able to interact, and then they can actually contribute in terms of the product development, and they'll be able to actually integrate all their product code which they are developing, right? That's how this the concept of Git started in the middle of 2000. And this, if you look at it right now, it is like a huge, you have like millions of users who have adopted to the GitHub, and the Git community is fairly very large, right? Like the entire open source software community is all part of the Git community. And then going a little back behind, right? Sometime early 2001, 2000. What happened was, when slowly the adoption of open source started taking place, people started realizing when the big corporates like Microsoft started realizing, they are getting a threat because, there is some sort of a competition which is going to happen now, right? Because Microsoft at that point was a monopoly in terms of the operating system, but now they figured out, it's going to be a threat for them. It's going to be a challenge. So sometime, in 2000, 2001, you would have heard about Halloween documents, okay? What really it means is internally, there were a lot of memos circulating within Microsoft where they were talking about, the Linux Foundation, and also the Linux coming up with their own operating system. People were talking about, internally, and, the senior management or the development community within Microsoft, they were seeing actually a threat in terms of competition, right, from Linux. That's how, a lot of memos were, going back and forth internally within Microsoft. And obviously, the way it started, they were just started discussing about the threat. But, slowly what happened internally in Microsoft was, they were actually planning to figure out how they'll be able to suppress the threat. Generally, as an open source, as a platform, or, in particular about Linux operating system, right? So they were targeting to figure out how we can, suppress internally, how this open source could be suppressed so that, it's not a threat for Microsoft. So that started, all that, documents were leaked sometime outside. And then later Microsoft accepted that, it is all authenticated, those happened really within Microsoft. And the documents, were called as Halloween documents because these documents were shared, during the time of Halloween, sometime in October. So that's why they were called as Halloween documents. But interestingly, we see between 98 and 2016, right? 2016-18 timeframe. Between this 20 years, look at the evaluation and look at the influence this Foss has made generally in the entire ecosystem, right? Like, for example, 98, where Microsoft was vehemently, opposing the open source foundation itself. And look at 2018, where they were able to acquire GitHub for about $7.5 billion, right? So the kind of evolution which has happened between 98 and 2018, within these 20 years, Foss has significantly grown. That's what it would indicate, right? Because once earlier in the time frame, Microsoft figured out it was a threat, but at the same time, the last few years, they have actually acquired GitHub. They have realized the value of, Foss and the open source foundation. And they figured out, what is the value that the open source ecosystem is going to bring to the products or the services that they're offering, right? And the kind of adoption that the community can get by means of acquiring this entire ecosystem. So this is the kind of evolution which has gone through in terms of Foss, right, over the last 20 years. And then from an industry perspective, right, the last couple of years, if you look at it, some of the biggest acquisitions in the IT industry, the software industry, it's related to the open source software. Like one is the GitHub, and then you saw a very big acquisition of Red Hat, right, which happened with IBM, which is to the tune of about $35 billion a couple of years back. So this is the kind of evolution Foss has gone through in the last 20 years. Now, if you come specifically to the from an Indian ecosystem standpoint, right? The way it has evolved, right, between '98 and the current period, where parallelly a Linux user group started in India, and then there were a couple of chapters which got opened. Like for example, there was one in Delhi, and then Bangalore, the Silicon Valley of India, right? There, one of the initial work groups for Linux which got started along with Delhi. And slowly, people actually started getting involved in this community. They started actually, though they were not contributing much, they definitely were getting familiar with, what are the different things which are going across the globe, right? That gave them an opportunity to be part of this Linux user group in India and see, at least to be staying abreast of, what is happening across the globe. And then if you shift down gear, right, in early 2000s, if you look at it, there were a few key conferences which really happened in India. Like one is, I would call out the conference which happened in Trivandrum in Kerala, where the Kerala, with Trivandrum as the venue, they actually hosted the Free Software Foundation conference. That was actually inaugurated sometime in 2001. The first Foss conference happened here, and then obviously the government of Kerala has played a very significant role in terms of their contribution with the Foss adoption, and in terms of this particular first conference happening in Kerala, and then also they also have actually contributed significantly, in terms of setting up the international conference for the first time in Kerala, which is called IC-Foss. And basically, this was actually conducted to promote the Foss usage in late 2000s. And obviously, this definitely, was one of the significant, conference which happened, and which also paved a lot of, precursor for the kind of work, the government of India has also done in terms of the Foss adoption. And in terms of, mid 2000s, right, obviously, there were a few other things which also happened, right? Even before the open source policy and adoption framework, which was formulated sometime in 2015, all these informal things started happening much earlier than that. So, the conferences which have happened, in setup in Trivandrum, these were all a precursor, for the, they all contributed to the adoption of the, the framework and open source policy, which was set up by Government of India in 2015. And also, 2011 and 2015, obviously, the judiciary, community within Government of India, right, in the Indian subcontinent, they have actually played a very significant role in terms of the open source adoption. If you look at it, 2011, I would say, even before the policies were actually implemented, they started putting together their own framework where they'll be able to adopt the open source software within their ecosystem. And 2015 it was formally announced where courts in India could obviously switch to open source software. That's when they formally actually migrated all their applications to the Ubuntu open source platform. So this gives you an idea about the Foss timeline from a global standpoint, as well as how the evolution happened within India. And of late, in the last 5-10 years, if you look at it, right, again, there are a few more significant contributions from Kerala, particularly, where they brought up a program called IT at School, where they took a bottom-up approach, where the teacher and student community were very vibrant, as part of this particular initiative, and where the Kerala government have started this initiative, looking at the popularity of the adoption from the student and teacher community, right? And they were able to actually come up with a program called IT at School, where they were able to provide free software-based IT training programs, in public schools in Kerala state. So they were able to actually adopt about 12,000 schools across the state, and they in fact promoted this free software-based IT training. That was a pretty big success within the Kerala government. And this is one of the government within India where the Kerala state is significantly allocating budget every year in terms of the open source adoption, where they have a good roadmap in terms of what they wanted to actually do going forward. So they do it keep periodically allocating budget in their formal government budget plans. So this basically again talks about some of the key activities which happened within the Indian ecosystem, right? Like, for example, I'm not sure how much you heard about this product called this is an ERP product where it's called ERP Next, which is actually created by Rishabh Mehta. And this product is like very familiar. They are offering the entire suite of enterprise resource planning. They offer multiple modules, and it is completely open source. Like, for example, Reliance, corporate has adopted significantly this product, and even personally, I have actually used this ERP Next product for evaluation, and we are trying to actually see whether this could be adopted in the educational institutions, because they offer a very good suite of different modules where you'll be able to actually do all the digital automation as part of the school administration. So that's one product that I wanted to highlight, ERP Next, which plays a very significant role in the Indian ecosystem. And then I think I talked about the courts in India, right, where they have significantly adopted the judiciary community. They are using it for their court trials. They use it for all their documentations and everything. And 2015, I think we will talk about more on the framework itself. I'll go dwell deeper into that. And then Foss as a business, right? Like, for example, I just wanted to just quickly touch upon this startup ecosystem, where you look at the last 4 or 5 years. India has grown significantly from a startup investment start point, and from an startup adoption standpoint, right? if if you're expected the same thing wanted to happen like 10-15 years, this could have not been possible, because being a startup, there are a lot of challenges in terms of cost, right? Obviously, one of the main thing for a startup to adopt is the kind of the product that they can develop, whether the framework itself is available freely, which they could adopt and build their product on their own. The Foss, the ecosystem is making them easily adopt, right? If you look at a lot of upcoming startup companies, they basically take up the available existing open source framework and see how they'll be able to quickly build upon a product on top of that. And so this is playing a very significant role. And if you look at it, there are a lot of products which has been built upon the open sources which are available currently, in the market. So I would say, if you think that why India is number 3 in terms of the the startup ecosystem right now across the world, this is Foss is one of the significant reason why they were able to actually reach this kind of a stage. Obviously added with the kind of development community that we have, the presence that we have within India. So this is typically an open source stack, which you're seeing here. And you can actually see there are like multiple layers, right? Like, for example, if you're building a product which is going to be an online, whether it's a mobile application or whether it's an enterprise application, there are multiple components to that, right? Like, for example, there is an user interface by which the end user, you being an end user, how you actually interact with the application, right? Like, for example, you see Facebook, right? You install that application in your mobile, and you open it up, and then you have an interface presented by Facebook on your mobile screen, right? So that's the user interface that I'm talking about. For this, there are several open source frameworks which are available, which you'll be able to easily take up and then adopt that to develop your product. Like, for example, in Autometry, the product what we have developed, right? We have actually a workflow system, and which is basically an user interface driven. And we have actually put together this the entire workflow and the user interface with whatever that's available as open source. We have taken up one of the popular stacks here, where you have the database, and then you have the middleware, and then you have the user interface layer, and then so everything put together is called a stack, right? Like I talked about user interface, and then you have multiple services which are available, and then you have the cloud platform where you will be able to host your application, which are all open source. And there are also closed sources, but there are a lot of services which are still available as open source. Like, for example, you have OpenStack, or you had Heroku earlier, but it got acquired by Salesforce. But still, there are several options available for you to host it, completely, which is open source. So coming back to my example, right? Say for Autometry, when we started building the product, what we did was we looked at from 2 different angles. One, how to make it easily adaptable, right, by the industry. And then we also looked at from a government tech standpoint, like what are the policy frameworks which they are actually promoting as a standard, right? So we took the 2015 policy open source adoption framework. We went through the details. We went through the kind of guidelines which they have provided there. And then we also looked at what is available in the market in terms of the open source which is available currently, which we can actually quickly adopt, right? Because adoption in the sense that the product should be scalable, and from a development standpoint, we should have the human resources available, right? We should have the development community who have the capability, or the adoption rate with which people are learning that particular product, that also should be available. You cannot just blindly take some open source which is not very popular, right, and which is not scalable. What will happen is, if you do that, obviously you don't have support from the open source community, or from a development community standpoint, right? So you won't be able to quickly adopt to that kind of product. So we did evaluation from both the standpoints. One, from the government mandated framework, where we actually looked at all the different recommendations which they were providing, and also we looked at the current open source market scenario. Based on that, we picked up one of the popular stack here, and we actually put together the framework for the Autometry product. And so this gives you a very broad perspective of what are the different products, or the services which are available today, and most of these are available free of cost. When I say again free, you have the freedom to actually adopt to the product what is available in the market. You have the freedom to actually go and make the changes to the underlying product or the framework which you're going to adopt. Okay, so we took up this one of the popular stacks. We quickly put together this product, and then the time to market is pretty key, right, for the startup entrepreneurs and the ecosystem. Like when you are going to come up with a product, obviously you need to bring that product to the market, in a very short span of time. Otherwise, you're going to actually lose your business to your customers. So that's one important thing, right? So definitely the Foss or the open source ecosystem gives you the flexibility to quickly adapt, take up the the available frameworks, find the people. Finding resources is pretty easy actually in the market. So we actually put together a product, I would say in about 4 to 6 months time frame, where we were able to actually come up with a completely full-blown minimum viable product, actually, where we will be able to demonstrate to a customer. We can go to the customer and show them a working live product. So all this were possible because we were able to actually quickly adapt to the open source framework which is currently available. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the Foss ecosystem, right? What is this Foss ecosystem? Because there are, obviously, when you talk about an ecosystem, there are multiple stakeholders in the ecosystem, right? And obviously every stakeholder is going to be very key to the ecosystem, because they're all going to be contributing, and it's going to be pretty significant in the way they contribute, right? And for example, they could be contributing in multiple levels in your ecosystem. For example, we will go a little bit deeper into the stakeholders, right? So we will talk about who are the key players here. So one is obviously the Foss community, right? So when you take up the ecosystem, obviously the community has to be very strong and vibrant. Where we are talking about a lot of individual developers, and then you have volunteers, you have different groups. We will talk more about what are the different communities that we have in our next slide. And then obviously, we also see a lot of non-profit organizations, because when you are actually developing a product, where it's going to make a societal impact, right? Or whether it's going to make an environmental kind of an impact. Obviously, we are going to look at, what is the kind of involvement from the non-profit organizations, right? So that is something. And then obviously, ecosystem funding is very key. So when you have a community, right, where is the funding going to be coming from, right? So that is something that that is very key. So the funders are going to play a key role. So within community, there are like multiple players. So that is Foss community is one of the key stakeholders. And then we will talk about the educational institutions. Okay, now if you look at the current open source ecosystem, right? the student community, they are playing a very, very significant role. I would say, they are very vibrant and they are quick with adoption. And then even, from a product development per se, right? Like, for example, in Autometry, when we actually started brainstorming about the product, we were actually looking at multiple options for putting together the, the product development team, right? Product development team, when you go for experienced folks, right? Obviously, there are a lot of challenges. Like, if you had to find people from, when you're looking for an experienced, a developer, obviously, you're going to be tapping them from the market. So when you do that, what really typically happens is they have a commitment with their current job, and then transition from their current job to your product development team, it's going to take time. The transition period is going to be pretty long. And then in terms of retention of these kind of developers, it's a big challenge. Okay, obviously, India being, we have a very large student development ecosystem. Obviously, one of the biggest challenge what the startup ecosystem is facing is, the employee retention. It's a major challenge. Okay, so we looked at all the different options, right? So we thought, why don't we tap into the student community, right? Obviously, there are students who are keen and who wanted to actually learn about the cutting edge technology, right? And they wanted to really contribute or show their prowess in their coding skills or in their development skills. So we thought we will actually collaborate with some of the educational institutions and figure out how we can actually take some of these experienced I would not say experience, I would say the students who are actually in their final year of graduation, where they're looking to actually do some external projects or doing some internships. We started looking at that as an option, right? So we figured out, we reached out to our network, and then we got in some of the the students as interns, and this actually worked out really well for our requirements, right? For doing this product development, because one thing I really observed from this community is they actually do a lot of things practically as they learn. So that's something they constantly keep doing that as they enter the colleges, right? It's I think there is still a long way to go, but still I see a lot of students actually looking at from a different mindset, right? They are actually bringing their entrepreneurial mindset when they even in their colleges, and then they started actually looking at and thinking about their ideas and how to actually make them convert those ideas into products. So that mindset has really started happening in the even in the Indian student community ecosystem, which has been pretty strong with the last few years actually. As the startup ecosystem is growing, obviously the student community is also contributing to a larger extent. This practically we saw when we did the product development for Autometry. So in terms of the stakeholdership, right, for the Foss ecosystem, what are the things the higher education, the research institute, the online education platform, and the schools can contribute? We can actually look at that. What kind of challenges that they face today, and how do we overcome those challenges? That's something that we'll see as we go through the slides. And then from a Foss businesses standpoint, what are the different global tech firms, right? Obviously, there are several tech firms who actually have developed a product, and then they open source some of their products or services to the community. They contribute back to the community, right? There are several business houses like that. And then we can also look at from an MSME standpoint, how adoption can happen, right? And being an independent consultant in the businesses and corporates, how being a consultant can contribute. How if you look at me, right? Me being a consultant, how I can contribute to the startup ecosystem. how I actually can go and evangelize my learnings to the educational institutions, right? So that's something that I can think about. So from a business standpoint, what are the challenges and what are the key takeaways and improvement areas that we can look at? And then finally, I'll go a little deeper into the Foss, the government ecosystem, right? Currently, where exactly we are from a government standpoint, how much they have contributed since the open source adoption framework, was done in 2015. What really has happened in the last 5-6 years, and what can the government of India can do better, right? So that's something. What are the impending challenges people face in terms of actually interfacing with the government e-governance platforms. That is something we'll see. So on a broad perspective, so this is these are the major players in the Foss ecosystem, and we will see what are the challenges and what are the recommendations that we can look at, how we can actually overcome these challenges, and then what is the intent here, right? So why are we doing this? This is basically to make sure that how we can actually create Foss-led opportunities in India, right? So whether it be it in the business houses, or whether be it part of the educational institutions, or whether be it part of the government e-governance initiatives, or the Foss community standpoint, how the Foss ecosystem can contribute, and how it can lead to opportunities in India. So that's something we'll see as we go forward. So talking about the Foss communities, right? There are like multiple different types of communities. Basically, what we are seeing here is, there are like single project communities, and then there are some domain specific, and then there were communities which were formed, for specific reasons. Okay, so we can actually categorize into these broad 3 areas. So if you go into the domain specific communities, right? If you take, for example, for example, let's take the umbrella organization, right? The Apache. Apache is like an organization which is comprising of multiple projects. There are like hundreds of projects below the Apache Software Foundation, right? And this is basically an umbrella of organization. Basically, what they do is, this is like one of the type of community, and basically, the structure they have here is very similar to what a corporate does, right? They basically have a board of a group of people where actually they represent the Apache umbrella organization. And then what they have done is they have actually created subgroups for each project, which actually they are contributing, right? And each project is driven by a set of people. And imagine them as a particular vertical within your corporate, right? Like, for example, there could be like multiple verticals, right? Could be like life sciences or financial services. Imagine different verticals within your organization. Likewise, this Apache community, they have created multiple projects, and each project is driven by like a group of people. Like, you can imagine them as a CEO, CEO and a group of people representing that group. There could be, governing the entire, development of that project. So this is one type of community. And then there are a lot of, single project communities. Like, for example, if you take, I talked about Rishabh Mehta's ERP Next, right? Where, they have, Rishabh has developed a complete ERP platform, which is available for most of the modules. And this is particularly for a single project, okay? So, and Julia is something, another, it's a programming language, which is, largely used by, research institutions, and now predominantly a lot of, supercomputing platforms, right? Like high performance computing. They actually run a lot of simulations using Julia to crunch, data. And it's a fantastic, programming language. It's very highly scalable. And so those are all some examples of single project communities. And then obviously there are individual projects within corporations. Like for example, Google has got something called TensorFlow. TensorFlow is basically they have opened up TensorFlow, where you'll be able to actually create your neural net models, right, for machine learning, deep learning kind of work. If you have to actually, develop completely a simulation, right, which is going to be driven by artificial intelligence. So there's something called TensorFlow, which has been released as an open source from Google. So this is a community within, which started within the corporation Google, and then it has been opened up, where, now the open source community can contribute to TensorFlow. And then obviously you all know about Python, right? Python is widely used, in the AI world, where a lot of machine learning, deep learning kind of simulations are being developed. And in terms of the, in the big data and data crunching areas, right? Obviously, in the data science field, Python is largely used because of its ease of use. And then this again, it started within the academic institutions, right? And then it started slowly, and it got popular, and then it has become so large now. It has been opened up for the the community, right? Where now people are able to contribute to the Python development. So so this is more on the Foss and communities, right? And then this is the complete Foss community ecosystem, right? Like for example, if you look at here, right, we talked about different contributors like funders, and then educational institutions, business houses. How they can actually interact with the Foss community. They will be able to contribute in their own way, right? Like for example, educational institution, right, will be able to actually help the this community ecosystem actually to train the student community, right? To for the people or the students to learn about the open source stacks, so that they can actually be like an evangelizers, right, for the Foss products. And then we also talked about the business houses, where Google was an example where they actually developed a product in-house, and then they opened source it, right? TensorFlow was an example. And then obviously they can actually even acquire employees, right? Potential employees from the Foss community, because obviously they can always look for lean upon the vibrant Foss community for their future development, right? For product development. And so this is the entire ecosystem where all the different players are, and then how they actually contribute within the community. Now, coming to the challenges, right? What are the key challenges these communities have? Obviously, the initial barriers. Like for example, if you take up the Indian ecosystem, if you look at India, right, it is very diverse, and there are a lot of language barriers, and inclusivity is a problem, right? Like a lot of times, what happens is, there are barriers of entry going into this ecosystem. Like even if you are a fantastic developer where you wanted to go and contribute, a lot of times what happens is you bogged down by these kind of barriers, where you actually go into a community ecosystem, and then when you start interacting, you have these kind of challenges in terms of languages, in terms of the biases that we see in terms of languages. So those kind of challenges, right? So this actually puts down a very key contributor. So this is a very big initial barrier for somebody actually going into the community. And then obviously sustained contributions, right? See, typically what happens is a developer contributing significantly within the community, right? What they do is they actually do a lot of parallel tasking. Like they'll be doing a day-to-day job, and then out of their interest, they'll be doing a lot of contributions out of their own time. And then this typically what happens is typically you have a lot of work pressure, and then you also put in a lot of effort within the community here, right? And it actually leads to a lot of stress, and burn down happens, and then stress happens, and then over a period actually they all fall apart, right? The contributions may not be sustainable. Typically, wherever a human element is involved, right? Typically, all these tend to happen, right? So contribution, how do you sustain that? That's a big challenge. And then global connect, again, it's a problem. How do you keep connected with the international forums, the international ecosystem? Like, for example, you have a group here. How do you actually get connected with your peers in somewhere in other continents? Because if you're not connected, obviously, then you are not kept up to speed with all the developments which are happening across the world, right? So that's a big challenge in terms of the community. So global connect is a big problem. And how do we overcome this, right? Obviously, there are some recommendations which I'm sharing here. Obviously, there are quite a few things we can possibly look at, right? So one is from a leadership and mentorship program standpoint. How do we actually from a community how do we actually do a mentorship and talk about come up with a program where actually we can constantly interact with the communities and see how we can actually develop their leadership skills, how to keep them motivated in contributing to the forums that they are part of. That is something that possibly we can look at. So we can actually look at some kind of mentorship programs, right? And then how do we increase reduce the stress burnout? We can possibly look at increased representation, right? One important thing is we can actually bring about awareness. Awareness is a big challenge. Like, for example, in the consulting role that I'm playing today, right, within the Salesforce CRM space, what we do is we have this regular meetups where we actually talk about the different areas of the Salesforce CRM platform, and then we actually have a small group of people within the local area, right? We actually do a constant meetup where we actually bring up the people who are actually interested in participating in these kind of activities. We actually nurture for those talents, and then we provide them mentorship, and then we train them in the platform, and then we constantly have host sessions around the topics around the CRM Salesforce platform. That is something nurturing the community, right? The local community. That is something we can think about, where you have the local meetups, interact with the the local community people who are actually wanted to contribute, but who are hesitant to come into the community, right? Because of different challenges that we talked about. Talk about the challenges and discuss with them how to overcome that, mentor them. So that is something we do constantly in this meetups. And then investing on research and collaborations, right? So that is something we can actually possibly look at, how communities can actually collaborate with the other corporate bodies or research institutions, right? So where the investments can flow, and people can actually know a lot more about the interfacing collaborators. They'll get to understand more about that, and then see how they'll be able to proactively contribute with the collaborators. That's something that we can actually look at. And then the next key player in the ecosystem, right? This is the education. If you look at from an education industry standpoint, right? Obviously, you have the educational institutes. I think we looked at the different types of institutions, right? We are talking about higher educational universities and big colleges, and then we have
Mr. Prakash.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Prakash, We have, another 15 minutes. We would like to, speed up. Okay.
Sure. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
So we have educational institutions, different types. We talked about research institutions, deemed universities, and different bodies, right? Like schools, colleges. We have online, education platforms and all several things. How do they do the FOSS adoption today, right? How do they contribute? What kind of challenges they face? So typically, the challenges are related to the proprietary software dominance, right, in the market. So that's a big challenge. How do we overcome that? Because typically, it's all dominated by the commercial softwares. And then in terms of evangelizing FOSS itself, right, in the educational institutions, what kind of awareness that we are bringing in to the student community? That's a big thing that we might have to look at, right? We might have to overcome that hurdle because if you look at across India, I don't know how many institutions are adopting to educating the student community in terms of what is available as open source and what are the different licenses as part of the open source which are available, and to bring them up to speed of the different open source stacks which are available, right? Full stacks, and bring that kind of awareness, right? How proactively the universities are doing that. That is something we might have to keenly look at. And obviously, we have to constantly re-emphasizing this exercise, right, to the institutions, because the students come in, they go out. It's not like an on-time exercise. We have to keep doing this day in, day out, year in, year out, right? Because we have a new set of people coming into the community, into the colleges. So that constant evangelization need to happen. So what kind of, the plan that we have put in place, that is something very important, to overcome this challenge. Because, out of all these different stakeholders, I think the education is one of the key stakeholder that I foresee, because this education, the student community is going to be the significant contributors of the open source ecosystem, right? So obviously, we, India being a major contributor for software development, obviously we need to put a lot of things in place so that the open source software adoption as well as contribution back to the open source can happen significantly on both sides. I will not go deep into the business. I think I'm going to talk more about the government of India and FOSS. And I think I talked a little bit about the roadmap earlier, right? 2015, the adoption framework for open source, the policy was drawn upon, the framework was set up. And then as a precursor, starting early in 2000, right? Government of Kerala, they stand as a model state championing FOSS in India. Where they have done quite a lot of work in terms of setting up the ID policy, in conducting the conferences, and in terms of actually doing some bottom-up work, actually, where in terms of setting up the education digital platform, right, for the teaching community. They have put together a significant work. I was able to see last year when we had these pandemic challenges, right? I think Kerala did very well actually in terms of adopting to this online platform. So that's some significant work which has gone through. And also they have actually done a lot of deployment in other institutions also. Like, for example, Electricity Board, Public Works Department, Legislative Assembly, they have done some significant adoption. And then some of the recent initiatives that the Kerala government is working on is one of the initiative or the ecosystem around the space tech application, which is significantly coming up, where the government of India is trying to come up with a public-private partnership, right? So this is going to play a major role there actually. So, and then besides Kerala, I just wanted to talk about the other states which have adopted FOSS, right? Like, for example, Tamil Nadu, they've done a lot of work through LCOT, and then Uttarakhand, Assam, West Bengal, Haryana are some of the states which are contributing to FOSS. And from a government survey standpoint, right, which was done in 2020, though adoption has happened from an e-governance standpoint, we still rank 100 out of 193 countries in terms of e-governance adoption. So if you look at the last 5-6 years, right, we still have a long way to go in terms of adoption. Even within the Asian countries, we are actually way behind than Sri Lanka and the other sub-region leaders. And I think I talked about Indian judiciary earlier, and they are one of the major players in terms of the adoption here. And e-governance is one of the major focus areas and initiatives from government of India, because here, as part of this initiative, the government wanted to have a zero footfall, of people coming into the government offices. That's one of their key goals. And obviously, in order to meet that challenge, there are significant strengthening which need to happen, right? In terms of the IT infrastructure within the government, and then promoting some of the platforms which are already available as part of government e-governance platforms. So promotion is going to be very key, actually. So, and again, in terms of the government, you look at it again, what are the different players interacting with the government organization, right? You talk about Foss community, and then you have the citizens and the businesses which are actually contributing to the some of the government related projects, right? Where they actually procure the digital services which are available from the government. And then educational institutions, I think, where actually institutions are actually building capacities, and then a lot of research institutions like IITs and Indian Institute of Sciences and some of the big research institutions, right? They actually do a lot of digital initiatives, like specifically in terms of supercomputing, in those areas, right? They work closely with the government organizations, where actually significantly they contribute and research on new digital initiatives. Okay, and obviously the Foss community, as the ecosystem grows up, how Foss community will be interacting with the government, how they will be consulting and contracting with the government framework to build these solutions locally. And challenges, obviously, one of the key challenges that I wanted to touch upon is the public service delivery, right, in local languages. I think I talked about this, and this is going to be a key challenge. And there are significant improvements in the Foss area, where we can look at in specifically the natural language processing. We can make significant inroads in actually developing solutions for translation in multiple languages. I think there are some NLP solutions available for about 17 Indian languages. So if you do a Foss adoption there, obviously taking some of the e-governance projects, right, across to the Indian market, it's going to be fairly easy. So this adoption is pretty key there, actually. And one of the key recommendations which I wanted to talk about is the IT procurements, which is currently happening, right? So the Foss had to be mandated in terms of the procurements. Like, for example, in the bids, whatever the conditions which are being laid out today, though they are actually opening up for the MSME and the startup community, where there are a lot of relaxations from a government of India standpoint, but definitely there are still some hurdles in terms of mandates what is being drawn in terms of IT procurement, right, from government of India. So one is from a from a participation standpoint from small companies, where they are not able to compete with the bigger corporates. That's one challenge. And then obviously if we can actually reframe some of the mandates, right, in terms of the IT procurements, where they can actually open up and then rewrite some of their terms and conditions, which can revolve around the Foss framework. obviously it gives a level board for the startup community and then the open source community to equally participate in these kind of IT procurement activities as part of Government India. So that's something that I wanted to highlight. So in terms of my concluding remarks, right? One of the important things that I wanted to talk about. So we talked about the ecosystem, and then how do we actually bridge all these different players in the ecosystem, right? Obviously, we need to have a central kind of a foundation or a registry who can actually oversee all these different players, right? So we need to have some kind of an alliance between all these different ecosystem players like community, institutions, businesses, governments, where we can actually bring up all their contributions together, and then have a single mandate, right? As part of this one large alliance, which will bring everybody together and then drive a single mandate where we can actually all these ecosystem partners can actually work together for a single mandate. If we don't do that, what happens is it's difficult to integrate all these different the players, right? Obviously, each one of us have our own mandate and priorities, right? How do you bring everything together? So if we have to do that, we need to have somebody who can actually govern this, all these different players, bring them together into a single purview. So that's something like a national Foss alliance, which we can look at, right? Where it brings out all these different players together into a single platform, and then all these players work towards a mandate. The mandate could be a small mandate to begin with, and then probably we can expand that mandate as we go forward. Once we figure out the success of the alliance, right, working together, then we can actually figure that out, and then from our learnings we can actually grow our mandate to a bigger kind of roadmap. So that is something which is very key. So I just wanted to talk about this National Foss Alliance, which is very key actually to overcome some of the challenges and to take this forward to the next level. So this is something that we can think about. And then obviously where Foss can be leveraged, we talked about the national natural language processing, right? Where a lot of AI, NLP kind of frameworks are available, right? And those can be actually used, as part of the solutions or the recommendations that we provide, right? Like for example, Foss tools are available for multiple Indic and Dravidian languages. How do we include them? How do we adopt? So make use of Foss tools, right? And obviously, one thing I've seen is there are several examples which we can quote right now in terms of the Foss adoption in the government sector, where they've been pretty successful in terms of Aadhaar, biometric, their DigiLocker implementation, GSTN, and the government e-marketplace, Informatics, and there are several platforms which are available. I think as we go forward, we need to open this up, right? We don't see many people adopting these kind of services. Like, for example, if I have to do some Aadhaar kind of authentication for my own product, are there any services which are available today? I'm not very sure. Are they open? I think they might be open. They may not be open. We need to make them open, and then we need to make sure it is getting propagated to the community across, right? So that people are aware of these kind of services. I think that's the main reason why the government of India they started something called OpenForge, like GitHub, where they have a repository where they actually put together all these API services which are available. And I see very minimal usage of OpenForge. From an adoption standpoint, that has to be increased, right? So that people can start looking at these services and then adopt them. And obviously that's how the Foss ecosystem can actually grow. So my closing thoughts. Actually, software is eating the world. That was the remark made by Mark Andreessen. who is actually the inventor of Netscape, which was one of the earliest internet browsers, and he's one of the active VCs now, venture capitalists. And if you look at from a software adoption standpoint, right? We have from financial services to transport to manufacturing, logistics, entertainment, you call it, you name it, any industry, right? Software is a dominant force. You definitely can't deny that, right? It's a very dominant force in the value chain. And, if you look at some of the platforms, right, like Uber, Airbnb, and so how did they grow such big, right? They don't, Uber does not own even a single taxi, or, Airbnb, they do not own rooms for renting it out. But if you look at from an adoption standpoint, right, their common software platform, which has become very significant, right, in terms of adoption, which helped them soar in their respective industries. If you look at that, their market capital is much more larger than any of the other, corporates in the hospitality or the travel industry, right? And so what I'm trying to convey here is software is key, and what has happened is hardware has actually become a commodity, and the differentiation is being brought out by actually the software, and it's going to be very critical in the adoption of future technologies like 5G and going forward, right? And we are talking about big data, analytics, and then AI big time, right? Obviously, deep neural networks. So software is going to make a very, very significant presence, and they're going to be the differentiator. And so obviously, what led to all these, inventions, right, or adoption? Foss would be the single, big reason for being leading to this kind of a rapid tech development. And then from an Indian ecosystem standpoint, right, obviously Foss is available in more than 17 languages. So as I mentioned earlier, it's would be fairly easy to actually adopt that kind of a framework and then do an implementation pan-India. And then startup ecosystem in India is really thriving. I think this is because of one of the main reasons is Foss. And from an economic standpoint, obviously, cost is always an issue, right? Obviously, in a country like India, cost plays a major role. So Foss is going to play a significant role as we go forward. And so just to summarize, software, it's going to be integral to all the sectors of the economy. And with the largest base of the software developers that we have in India, across the world, I think we can actually revive that the vibrant community. Okay, if we can actually quickly adopt Foss, and if all the different major ecosystem players that we talked about, right, industry, academia, government, and then the community, if we all can actually come together as part of this alliance, Foss Alliance, and then make it happen. I think we should all come together, and we should make happen to invent India's future. Thank you very much again for this wonderful opportunity. And I would, as a closing remark, I would like to acknowledge the research lab called Civic Data Lab, and the Civic Data Lab, along with Omidyar Network in India. They have actually done a lot of research in the, the state of Foss in India specifically, and they have done significant contributions. And I would like to acknowledge them here, where I've actually drawn upon a lot of different research work, what has been done through their research work, right? So here I wanted to acknowledge them, and then. And briefly, I'll talk about the product, where I'm actually going from strategic advisory, right? So we have this product, which I mentioned earlier, which is basically an automated building plan approval system. Today, what is happening is when you actually wanted to build a building, right? Whether it's being a commercial or a residential, or any type of building that you wanted to come up with, right? So obviously, you need to actually draw up a plan where you work with an architect, and then depending on where that the building is going to be located, it has to be approved by a building plan authority, right? And in most of the places across India, the way it is happening today is it's a lot of things actually happen manually. What happens is the architect comes up with a blueprint, and then the blueprint is manually taken to the building plan authority, and then building plan authority actually reviews the plan. They actually come personally to the building site. They have to do a review, and then once they do the review of the site, they actually come up with their recommendations, or they come back and tell you with the corrections, right? So that's how typically happens. What we have done here is we have actually developed a complete workflow where an architect can actually upload a drawing digitally, and then based on where this building plan is currently need to be approved, right? We actually have a rule engine which basically have the set of rules for that particular building authority, local building authority. And then once the drawing gets uploaded into the system, right, the data from the drawing gets extracted, and the information, whatever that's extracted from the drawing, it gets compared with the rules mandated by the authorities, right? They have the bylaws which has been defined through the rule books. So this comparison happens online, and we actually do the comparison, and then we come up with the recommendations. Like if there are like 50 different parameters with which the bylaws have to be compared, right? We do that for that particular authority, and then we generate a detailed report where the building authorities can look at it, and then they can actually, based on the the details what we have in the report, they can either approve it or they can actually reject and send it back to the the user, right? The building architect. The building architect, they can come back, they can make corrections, and then they can actually reload the blueprint digitally, and then this process can carried out. So we have actually put together this this platform, this framework, and then the entire workflow has been developed using open source. As I said earlier, we actually looked at the framework, what has been defined as part of the Government of India, and then we also looked at the kind of frameworks which are available online, and then we completely built the workflow as an open source. We still have the backend running with some proprietary software, but over a period we will possibly evaluate and see how those also could be converted as an open source, right? So from an open source adoption standpoint, Autometry Technologies has done a wonderful job. They have developed a product where we were able to successfully demonstrate this product to multiple building authorities, and we started sometime late last year, and due to pandemic reasons, things are a little slow, but we are definitely seeing a lot of traction in terms of the interest from the building authorities. So that's something, the product that I wanted to highlight as part of this presentation. Again, I finally wanted to thank Mr. Professor Moni Madaswamy and the International Webinar Series, this forum, which is being moderated by Professor. Thanks for giving me an opportunity. And I just wanted to thank my fellow colleagues from Autometry also, because through them I had an opportunity to interact with Professor Moni. We got this wonderful platform to talk about open source and the kind of challenges that we currently are facing, and how we can actually overcome these hurdles. With that, I end my presentation, and I hand over to Professor Moni. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prakash Ramaswamy. You have taken a journey from 1998 to 2021. It's a beautiful, educational journey, business journey, technology journey, and you also said it that to become a startup, tech startup, you have to be thorough with the ecosystem in which one has to operate. And I'm very happy that without any inhibition, without any, you have really opened up. It is like a open knowledge you talked about. And I'm very happy that you are with your vast experience, both internationally and domestically, and how you are able to use open source technology, open technology, and you are able to build up systems, the product which is needed. And actually, even though in my introductory remark I talked about GovTech and regulatory tech, and you have given a sample after your lecture that your building plan approval system based on open source technology is a regulatory technology. That the regulatory technology in the sense that the footfall of the government officials visiting the site is reduced. It's a zero footfall, and this is where that the large scale corruptions can be eliminated through adoption of technology. And I completely agree with various points which you have put it up. That even though I still remember when Government of India announced the district level expansion of NICNET and the District Information System program to bring in computerization and information revolution and 512 districts way back in 85. Dr. Vijay Ditya was my senior colleague. He was looking after NICNET operation, NICNET installation. And I was given the responsibility to visualize as to what to computerize, how, what to be computerized at the district level. I was made as the project head for District Information System program on the basis of my interactions and conducting about 20-25 workshops in Kerala State. I took Kerala State as a model, and that time in 85. I visited every district, conducted conferences. I was shown black flag that go back, no computerization. And in 1985, 86, 87, and those periods, and also asked to stop when I had a discussion in Government of Kerala with the state level officials for operationalization of NICNET and district in the state of Kerala. But today, Kerala, you are able to bring out a lot of they have traveled from 87 to now. Much water has flowed down the river. They are now IT industry has become a developed industry in the state of Kerala. Thank you very much. I walked Padayatra in 87 and those days in every district. The district collectors later they become secretary to Government of India. They were allowed to organize a district level half-a-day workshop on the promotion of IT in the district for promotion of district program on those days. Visualized 28 sectoral database development programs. Talked about a lot of things. And that time, in order to promote, we have introduced SCO Unix. That Linux, came into the variation of, Unix, Linux, it came in this, 1995 onwards, 98 Linux Foundation has been set up, that we promoted SCO Unix and the Fox base, and 512 districts were at that time 87. Then National Informatics Center also has promoted, version of, Linux, this open Unix, and then, Ubuntu, NIC also set up National, Open Technology Center in NIC to promote open source technology. And when when I was the Director General in NIC, I have given the recommendation for making open source as a mandatory for NIC applications. If NIC has to develop any applications in government, it has to be on open source. It happened in 2013, and then 2014, the Government of India come out with open source policy. So the thing is that as a country, we have traveled a lot. But the thing is that, as you rightly said it, what is our contribution? Apart from utilizing the technology tools, we are a superpower. And a lot of ecosystems are taking, a lot of startups are, there. But startups, tech startups in open source technology is a must. And with so many, Indian Institute of Technologies, National Institute of Technologies, and the Indian Institute of Information Technologies and Central University, 4,500 engineering colleges who teach computer science, and 18,000 non-engineering colleges who teach computer science. And this is a time that many of our, youths who go through school and go through higher education, and with the national, new education policy 2021, adoption of a national vast, free and open source alliance is a must. It has to be, it has to be, a foundation and alliance for every student from the school, every citizen who has the capability to build up systems, has to be, be the part of the national free and open source alliance. I'm very happy that you strongly recommended today. And Soviet Institute of Engineering Technology, through this initiative of Center for Informatics Development Solutions and Applications, Center for Industry 4.0 Technology Studies and Applications, and in association with African Asian, development, rural development organizations, we will, as a part of this international webinar series on open source digital technology for self-reliant India, we will see to that the open national open source, free and open source software alliance, is evolved, is in place, and in the country to bring out, open technologies, open framework, for India to lead in the design and development of open source technology tools. That's the reason only here, this is the first university in the country to run an international webinar series in the critical period like COVID-19 pandemic situations, that on open source digital technologies for self-reliant India, to give a confidence to all the startups that you don't have to run around for problems, that an university like Soviet Institute of Engineering Technology, Soviet University, is there to support you. We will bring the experts, technologists, and the tool builders and ecosystem developers from India and from abroad through the our NRI diaspora. So we will bring those technologies and the support to all the startups who would like to take that journey. This is I am very happy today that you even though you are building up a lot of tools with this one, but you decided to concentrate more than 1.5 hours time in talking about the ecosystem. That is more important. The framework is more important, and India can generate wealth only in bringing out development of tools, technology, and this is more important. And you also conveyed it to the people that in a big company like General Electrics and this Panasonic, and they're adopted, and Reliance adopted open source technology to the core. And you also read it in when you talk about open source adoption in government, and you have pinpointed that your Foss mandate in IT procurement has to be spelled out properly to support startups. And this is a strong recommendation to the government. So I'll be very happy that based on the discussions today, we will submit to the government in a policy paper based on today's discussion. And also that I will also request you to get associated with the university, that we are also trying to have a Center for Open Technologies and Computing, and to train the rural youths, because 4 centers of excellence, this is the university in the whole world in India have been set up to motivate the rural youths to study and adopt technologies. They did not come to urban area. Let the technologies go to the rural area for the rural youths to study, because they have the tremendous capacity, capability, ability to study technology. The minute they come to urban area, the cultural problem comes. And the first semester, it is very difficult for them to cope up. And if the first semester, if they don't get the high marks, then the second semester, third semester, fourth semester, they go down. So this has to be bridged it, and this gap has to be overcome. And that's why this university, through the 4 centers of excellence, we have decided that to bring the technology to the student with the with the foundation on internship. And we would like to have it. Every student who come out, he should go as an entrepreneur. That's why agriculture as a sector we have concentrated, because agriculture is an important thing, that whichever the technology which they study, they undertake through internship, they will be in a position to initiate a startup in entrepreneurship, in agriculture sector. They don't have to look for anything else. So our intent is very clear. I am very happy, and thank you very much for Mr. Prakash Ramaswamy. Today you have taken, I don't know how much time. You must have spent a lot of time, to prepare for today's program for the benefit of the students of the Soviet Institute of Engineering Technology, and also a lot of startups, and also other other graduates who have come back from urban area to rural area, to see that today's webinar is a stepping stone for them to venture into new area. So we have to launch a lot of technology, the certificate and the diploma programs in open source technology based on the ecosystems which we talked about it. And we will, would like to welcome, and also would like to have your association with the university to conduct even certificate programs, technology diploma programs for the benefit of the rural students. Thank you very much, Mr. Prakash Ramaswamy, and also your friends. And I'm very happy that through Mr. Sundar from US, he asked me that, Professor Moni, we are watching your programs. Will you in a position to discuss with this e-governance tech startup group based in Chennai, and give an opportunity for them to talk in your open source webinar? And it has happened today, and you have done a wonderful talk, and it is a value addition. Thank you very much. And with this, and we close the webinar and leave the studio. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks for your participation, and greeting from Soviet University. For more research inquiries, please contact Professor Moni Madaswamy, Professor Emeritus and Chairman, Center for Informatics, Development Solutions and Applications at Center for Industry 4.0 Technology Studies and Applications, and former Director General, National Informatics Center, Government of India, New Delhi. My email ID, moni@sovietuniversity.ac.in. We thank the Honorable Chancellor of the Soviet Institute of Engineering and Technology, deemed to be university, and Honorable Chancellor of Soviet University, and His Excellency, Secretary General, African Asian Rural Development Organization, for helping us to organize this international webinar series on open source digital technology, for self-reliant India. Thank you very much. Thank you.